million Muslims flock to Arafat Mount holy site in Mecca today. On the eve of Eid al-Adha, high prices and hard living conditions plague Yemenis nationwide. International Organization of Migration says 24 families have been displaced in Yemen during the past week. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Injil Zazi. 2 million pilgrims arrived to Arafat Mount holy site in Saudi Arabia today to perform the main pillar of Islam rituals. This ritual represents the pinnacle of the Hajj, which is one of the fundamental pillars of Islam. Officials anticipate that this year's event may be the largest in history, following 3 years of COVID-related restrictions. This report has more on this.
لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك.
Around 2 million pilgrims who came from all corners of the globe flocked to the area and the mountain of Arafat in Mecca to perform the fundamental ritual of Hajj in Islam. In Arafat, the pilgrims engage in supplications, making the climax of the annual pilgrimage. This year's Hajj will be the biggest since 2019, when about 2.5 million pilgrims took part. Last year, less than 1 million pilgrims performed the pilgrimage. More than 1.65 million pilgrims from outside the Saudi kingdom have arrived to perform Hajj this year, and they were joined by hundreds of thousands of domestic pilgrims. The Saudi authorities and Hajj missions of various countries have completed elaborate preparations and arrangements that enable the pilgrims to complete their smooth movement to perform the rituals.
In Hodeidah, the local markets, which are the main destination for people with limited income, are witnessing an outrageous increase in oil prices, especially the sacrifices for Eid al-Adha. This report has more.
The majority of families are unable to purchase their needs to receive Eid al-Adha amid a noticeable economic deterioration and a difficult living situation experienced by the citizens as a result of the ongoing war that was imposed on Yemen. The Monday market square is crowded with hundreds of sellers and customers in high south of Al-Hodeidah, and this is where people buy their basic needs. And going there became only for those who can afford it.
My salary is 20,000 riyal and I haven't received it for 8 years. Look at how people are just satisfied with looking at goods and being unable to afford them. Goods are expensive. What should I do when I have 10 children? The prices are increasing and those who have many children cannot buy Eid clothes, so people tend to buy from the second-hand clothes market.
The livestock sales section is considered one of the most important holiday attractions, but the reality of the immensely high cost made the power of purchase very low, in which gaining one sheep has become a dream for the people, which makes them unhappy and miserable and return back home empty-handed.
Prices of sheep have become very expensive now, which made citizens unable to buy them, which cost 100,000 to 200,000 Yemeni riyals. This sheep costs me 200,000 riyals, and people's financial situation is bad. The prices of sheep are high and people cannot afford to buy them, including the displaced people.
Tihama does not celebrate the arrival of Eid. Poverty, unemployment and inconsistent income payments all contributed to people's poor living conditions, which led to many families to be incapable to meet their basic demands, and the approaching of Eid al-Adha has turned into a nightmare for families. The war added to the agony of people and caused serious economic harm due to the loss of income sources, which puts individuals in direct contact with the toughest living situations.
Hike in the sacrifice markets in Ma'rib Governorate caused many citizens reluctant to buy Eid sacrifices, whose prices amounted to about 2,500 riyals per sacrifice. This report has more.
The debate is intensifying and the voices are loud about the buying and selling of sacrificial animals here in the livestock market in Ma'rib. An obvious increase in sacrificial animals before the blessed Eid al-Adha has exceeded 3 times the income of the citizen and turned the joy of Eid into worry and anxiety, a nightmare that haunts the head of many families living here in the country.
The prices of livestock these days are very high. We've been looking for almost 3 weeks now. The price of sheep could reach 200 or 250,000 riyal, and we can't afford such prices with our low income. Our condition is very bad. These days are like a nightmare for us. We're not able to get the needs of our families or clothes or toys to our children.
Among this huge number of sacrifices, Haj Ali Saeed tries to find a sacrifice for his family that suits his ability. Hours of searching pass and he does not find anything to bring back to his home, as the prices of the sacrifices in Ma'rib have become beyond the capacity of the citizens. As a result of the poor living conditions and the absence of sources of income, the Eid is no longer as it was a long time ago, bringing joy and pleasure to everyone.
I haven't bought meat for 8 months now, and I have 7 children and I can't provide for them. I haven't been receiving my salary for 2 months now. Our condition is really bad. We can't afford buying sheep, so we go to the store to get 1 kilo of meat that costs 10,000 riyal, and this is really expensive and it's not enough for a whole family. The reason behind the increase in prices of the livestock is the high exchange rate. Citizens can't afford buying Eid sacrifices with over 200,000 riyal. Some of them partner up to get 1 sheep together, but it's still very expensive.
Many reasons led to the increase in the prices of Eid sacrifices, including the unsupervised exploitation of Eid season by merchants, the deterioration of the national currency, and the deterioration of economic and living conditions. All these factors put citizens into a struggle with the requirements and needs of the feast, including the sacrifice that is within the reach of those who can afford it, but the poor can no longer afford the Eid sacrifice.
بن ثياب نشطط يعني ثياب نروح عن القرى نحوس وهذا نروح بثياب ونصلحها مآولنا وكراتين من الشوارع. والله إن احنا نكره المطر، يخسع لنا البطانيات، يخسع الفراش، يخسع الجماش، نسمر برادة، خاسعين احنا وجهالنا.
فالمأوى الانتقالي هذا الكنتيرة جعلتهم يعيشوا في استقرار للمستفيدين من ناحية سواء من ناحية الأمطار أو لا من ناحية العواصف والرياح والرملية، بما أنه عندنا هنا في مأرب الرياح بتكون شديدة.
Britain renewed support for the mediation efforts led by the UN to establish peace and stability in Yemen. British Ambassador to Yemen Richard Oppenheim said his country supports the process led by the United Nations to ensure that Yemen achieves the peace and stability it deserves. He added that any process regarding the future of Yemen must be through Yemeni dialogue, and it must be part of the process. Despite the recent rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and despite the direct Saudi-Houthi talks, peace in Yemen remains inclusive. The following report has more.
After 7 years of diplomatic estrangement, Iran and Saudi Arabia struck an agreement in March 2023, brokered by China to re-establish bilateral ties, a crucial incentive for Saudi Arabia's conciliation with its largest regional foe was to protect its territory from Houthi rebel attacks and, if possible, resolve the civil war in Yemen. As part of the Iran-Saudi deal, Tehran will stop sending weapons to the Houthis, their proxy in Yemen. Iran and the Houthis have developed a political and military alliance over the years, with Tehran lobbying for Houthi interests at the United Nations. According to the UN panel of experts on Yemen, Iran delivered small arms and light weapons, drones, improvised explosive devices, and sea mines to the Houthis in the 2 years following the Saudi-led operation. In 2018, Iran also sent new drone components, allowing the Houthis to significantly extend their range and strike targets deep into Saudi Arabia. UAV cross-border attacks have grown in quantity and complexity, and in March 2021, Houthi drones set fire to an oil complex near Riyadh. Prior to the Iran-Saudi agreement, the Houthis in Saudi Arabia established a ceasefire that lasted from April to October of 2022. Yemen saw an overall reduction in violence, which stood even if the truce was not formally restored. However, according to the UN panel of experts' most recent assessment, issued in February 2023, Iran has continued to send military assistance to the Houthis in quantities comparable to previous years. Direct discussions between Saudi Arabia and the Houthis are critical to achieving a long-term truce. The Iran-Saudi agreement has the potential to facilitate these discussions, but that is not a given. The discussions, which began in 2022, look to be making progress in April of this year, implying that the Iran-Saudi accord played a role. But even if the Saudis and the Houthis strike an agreement, it is unlikely to bring stability to Yemen as a whole, as Yemen's government has been excluded from participating in the negotiations.
The International Organization for Migration announced the displacement of 24 Yemeni families during the past week. The organization said the displaced families have moved to the governorates of Ma'rib, Hodeidah, and El Doda. The Houthi militia bombed populated villages in Al-Hada district, Lahj governorate. Local sources said the militia bombed with heavy artillery and mortar shells the homes of citizens without causing any casualties. The Rights Raider Organization for Human Rights called on the UN envoy to pressure the Houthi group to stop violations against civilians in Ib governorate. The organization called on the Office of the UN Envoy to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, to pressure the Houthi group to reduce violations against civilians in the governorate. They called on the Houthi group to respect the international humanitarian law. Coming next in the news. Sports in Yemen, a weapon of war and a prospect of peace.
من بداية الحرب ارتفع سعر المواشي وارتفع سعر الأعلاف. القونية البر ب 50,000، يلا نشتري نص قونية. بالنسبة لنا الرعاة عندنا يعني نفكر بالأعلاف، هذا اللي نفكر به. اليوم أقام منظمات الفاو وأعطيتنا احنا 3 جواني أعلاف و3 قوالب ملحية. نستفيد من الأعلاف غذاء للمواشي حافظا على صحة الأغنام، والقوالب الملحية فاتحة للشهية. الذي استلمته اليوم فيساعدنا في معيشتي الاقتصادية مع الأسرة، يعني بدل ما اشتري الأعلاف اشتري للجهال.
Welcome back. The UK embassy said Yemen has become a popular market for many types of drugs in the region. This came in a tweet published on the occasion of the International Day Against Drug Trafficking, which falls on June 26 each year. The embassy indicated that the British Navy seized more than £10 million worth of drugs in 3 separate incidents in the Indian Ocean and in the Gulf coming from Iran. The Houthi militia closed a number of mosques in Utma district, west of the Mar governorate. Local sources said the militia prevented the worshippers from performing prayers there after the people rejected the Houthi preachers who were imposed in those mosques. An official in the Antiquities Authority said there are thousands of Yemeni artifacts displayed in public auctions in many countries. He added that the Yemeni heritage is under a fierce attack, affected by the ongoing war in the country. He called on international organizations concerned with human rights heritage to play a greater role in standing with Yemen to protect its heritage and cultural property. Parties to the conflict in Yemen have constantly used sports to score political and military gains. Yet, sport professionals and national teams hope sports can bring back the fractured country. This report has more.
Athletics have been utilized by opposing parties in Yemen's civil conflict to achieve military advantages, but sportsmen for Yemen's national teams view athletics as a chance to bring the broken country back together. Houthis have exfoliated sports as part of their military strategy by recruiting sportsmen to fight in the war. Despite the conflict in Yemen, Yemeni national team football players claim that athletics may also be a chance to bring the country together. When Houthis seized control of Yemen's capital Sana'a in 2014, the Yemeni civil war began, and according to the UN, Yemen is one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world as a result of this nearly 9-year-old war. Since the conflict broke out, some Yemeni athletes got involved in the fighting, whether by chance or by force. In addition, Houthis hold seminars and activities promoting their ideology, as well as enforced a management team that is loyal to them. Dozens of Yemeni football players died fighting for the Houthis, including Abdullah Arif, the goalkeeper for the national team and Ashula Football Club, as well as the Yemeni national team and a Shab Sana'a Football Club player who was murdered fighting for Houthis in Hodeidah. By interfering with the work and events of sports, Houthis completely destroyed the Yemeni sports sector. They converted sporting venues, including Sana'a's Athora Stadium, the indoor sports center, and the headquarters of the Yemeni Football Federation, into weapons storage facilities and training grounds. Houthis used not only physical sport facilities, but also sports sentiment to support their ideas. Due to the civil war, sports participation fell by 88%. However, a few sporting events did take place, demonstrating the power of sport to foster coexistence and peace, as well as opportunities for mending the torn social fabric. Yemenis passionate for sports can help them overcome political and sectarian conflicts. Sports can help create a culture of peace among individuals if practiced without violence or interference from the Houthis.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. 2 million Muslims flocked to Arafat Mount, holy site in Mecca today. On the eve of Eid al-Adha, high prices and hard living conditions plague Yemenis nationwide. International Organization of Migration says 24 Yemeni families have been displaced during the past week. This is the end of the news. It was Angel Zazi. Thank you for watching.